Hi, my name is Jay from Cucumber Shop, and I started my business over 10 years ago. This is a side business of mine. I lived in Tucson for a while and I couldn't really grow much very well other than these kinds of cucumbers. I could grow other things, but nothing that really tastes good like tomatoes or other things. And I have grown a lot of varieties and I've grown a lot of friendships with those who live in other countries who have entrusted me to grow these indigenous cucumbers and melon varieties. And I just love what I do. I love sharing with others. I love being able to bring people back to their heritage and to their memories. And I love to be able to provide access to these indigenous varieties that really connect us to our past and help us prepare for an uncertain future.
Yeah, it's interesting reading a little bit about your story on your website. For people who want to check you out, check all the seeds you out, they can go to cucumbershop.com. When you started this, was it a passion project? I want to help preserve genetics. Was it a lucrative business opportunity of, hey, I'm into this. I bet other people are. I can make some money. What was the driver to go from just growing these things yourself to saying, I want to grow them, save them, and sell them?
It all started when I lived in Tucson and it's hot over the summer there. And I wanted to make the most of the light and the heat during the summer. And I knew that there was that opportunity. I tried growing regular cucumbers and tomatoes and other things. Some things did well, some things didn't. Then I stumbled upon the regular Armenian cucumber, that light cucumber with the ridges that a lot of people are familiar with. And it grew fantastic. I thought, oh, this is great, but I don't like the texture of it. I don't like the fact that it goes from really small and dry to large and hard seemingly overnight. And so I wanted some other options. And I slowly started to learn about a few more varieties. I tried the dark, I guess we call it dark Armenian, or in Italy, they call it the Tortorello Barise or Tortorello Scuro Barise. And then I tried the striped Armenian or painted serpent. I tried some other varieties, but it just so happened that kind of around this time, I was just looking on Blogger. Blogger was a big thing back there. So just to let everyone know, before Facebook was really big or Instagram was really big, there was this thing called Blogger and people used to blog. And so I started blogging and I saw some other garden blogs, and one of the garden blogs I finally found some other melons, muskmelons that are grown immature as cucumbers. That's what Armenian cucumbers are. That's what a lot of these things are. They come from ancient Egypt and they were grown all the way through quite a while to about 700 AD and a little past then in some areas of Europe before the regular cucumber really became established in Europe. But in any case, so the real driver was just trying to figure out something that would grow where I lived.
At this point in time, how many different varieties do you sell?
I don't know. So just melons grown as cucumbers, at least 24. Past that, regular cucumbers, there's a number that I grow myself. There's some that I resell, but I'm trying to limit that over time. So I'll get into that real quick just to provide a segue later for some things. A lot of the heirloom seed companies are either being bought up or there's not someone to keep them going. And what's happening is big wholesalers can sometimes come in and buy the companies up, and they may continue the varieties for a while, or they could possibly switch them out so that the varieties are not true to type. And they substitute with something else and call it by that name. So we're losing a lot of varieties. And so I'm very careful about that. And that's part of what I do and part of why it's so important for small farmers and market farmers and growers to save their own seed at least keep a stockpile just in case when they try to order those seeds again, they're not the same. So that's part of what I do is I'm really trying to steward and protect our seeds.
One thing you mentioned, and I just want to clarify it. I told you before I didn't want to get too deep into the cucumber side of things, but I think this is relevant because some people are like, wait, what is that? Cucumbers or melons grown as cucumbers versus cucumbers. Can you talk about the difference there?
Yeah. So the regular cucumber that everyone's familiar with, I'll start with that remained in Asia until we'll say about 700 AD, when it was brought by Islamic people into Europe. And they were there before then, before 700 AD, but that's when it really started to overtake melons that are grown as cucumbers. And before about 700 AD in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, people were eating cucumbers, but they were not the regular cucumbers we're used to, where, they can tend to be bitter. They store well. They may have thick skin. They may not. They have those little bumps on them. The plants have spines sometimes. Instead, what these were muskmelons, like cantaloupe or honeydew. And instead of being sweet, they were not sweet. They just lacked a lot of sweetness. And they were grown to have really nice texture and thin skin and things like that. And so they generally never become bitter. It just depends on genetics, but there's no stress factors. Like with regular cucumbers, stress factors will cause them to become bitter. With these, stress factors won't cause them to become bitter. They're easy on the digestion, and they love the heat. They are heat loving, and they were grown. The Israelites, as they were leaving after they left Egypt, they were looking back and saying, "Oh, we miss these cucumbers." And the Romans loved these things. One of the emperors, I believe Emperor Tiberius, he had them grow near rim because he loved them so much. So they were what they used as cucumbers before we have cucumbers come from Asia.
Is this more like dogs and cats or Dalmatians and labs?
They are different genetically. They cannot breed together. So it'd be more like dogs and cats, even though they're both, they cannot cross in any way.
Okay, so you're growing both of those types, and we'll definitely, for people interested, dive into the growing and these varieties in a future episode. But for now, just honing in on the business. What was the idea? You first started it, and was it, I'm just going to save some of the seeds that I grow, put it out there, and see if people want to buy them? Is that a simple start?
What happened was, so going back to the blogging, and this will segue into the business part, I didn't have access. I had no access to a lot of varieties from Italy that were very good. I was told they were very good. And so I was blogging about the melons grown as cucumbers that were longer, the Armenian and those kinds. And some gentleman from Italy just happened to see my blog and just happened to contact me and say, "Hey, we grow these melons as cucumbers in Italy. They're really good." And I'm like, "Oh, are you talking about Caracello cucumbers?" And he said, "Yes." I just happened to be following this other blog that happened to be talking about them. And this gentleman originated from the town where these things come from, and a lot of them come from. And so he got me connected with a group of growers. And the head guy of this group of growers eventually sent me some seed. His name's Angelo. Anyways, great guy. And I eventually got seed and started to save it. But I didn't have enough to be able to sell or anything. And I really felt this is such a wonderful thing. And they grow so well in the heat. You can grow them all. So many people need access to high quality vegetables. And so I found a seed seller in Italy. And at the time I was pretty poor. I lived in Tucson, and I was living up, supporting my family off this teacher's income. And Yeah, I was poor. And so I did the math. I contacted the company and they said, we can sell you a little bit of seed, but for the photosanitary certificate and the shipping, it's going to cost you like 200 without the seed. And I was like, I can't do that. So I said, okay, let's figure this out. So I did the math and how much is it going to cost for half a pound of all these different varieties? And so then they sold that to me. And before that happened, I had to go through my wife. And so I got a family, quote unquote, family loan from Sage. And then I received the seed, and it was actually high quality at the time, which was great. And then went from there. I started by selling seed using PayPal buttons on my blog. At the time, they had this thing called, I'm trying to think, there was a garden. Well, it wasn't Blogger. It was a garden blog kind of website, Facebook, but it was for gardens. And I'll have to let you know what that was. But I ended up getting pretty high in the rankings, and then that kind of helped pay for the seed. I ended up doing that.
Dave's Garden?
Oh no, there's another. I'll have to tell it to you later. But anyhow, then I opened up on Etsy within about 6 months. I opened up on Etsy and made the money and some from that I got loan from the family. So that's how it started. And before I actually started selling, I had a family member. I worked with a family member on making a logo, and I registered. Actually, before that, I got the domain name, and then I had a family member make the logo, and then I registered it with the state for the logo and the trademark, and then I opened up the shop from there. That's what I did.
Right on. And for people listening to this, thinking, all right, I may want to save seeds for my favorite type of vegetable. How lucrative of a business is this? Obviously, you can make it what you want. You can be like Jared Gettle and turn it into Baker Creek heirloom seeds, or you can keep it small and niche. But for you, is this something that, and let me quantify this. They're side businesses that are pure passion projects. Like they're glorified hobbies. They pay for themselves. They generate like just enough profit to like cover costs. Then there's side hustles where it brings in income, and we can use that additional income to do some extra stuff as a family that we couldn't do before. And then there's side hustles that are like, this is a big thing. It could be a full-time thing if I wanted it to. Where is this on the scale for you of it's a passion project that covers its cost to this had some legs, it's big?
Yeah, it's probably on the lower end for me. And I think the thing is, you need to start out asking yourself, and this is the thing with any business, you need to start out by asking yourself, what do I want this to be? How much am I willing to invest in this? And then just watch where it's going, what the trajectory is. If the trajectory is there's an incredibly high need for these and there's an incredibly high demand and I don't have enough supply, then yes, you can increase prices and make more. But really the real need, first of all, is yes, it has to pay for itself. It definitely has to, and some, because there's going to be things you're not going to anticipate. I wasn't anticipating I'm going to be paying a whole bunch of money for high quality soil when I started, but over time it's gotten to be at the point where, hey, I want a good crop. It's worth a lot to get this crop. I'm going to pay for high quality. So I'm going to fork over what I need to get a high quality product and to get this out to people. So I think it really depends on what I have had extra in the past. And I do put some extra into long-term savings. I think at the end of every year, I settle everything and figure out, okay, how much do I need for maybe half a year? And then I say, okay, I have everything that I need for this next year. And I have a half year of savings. Everything above that, I can bring home. I can tax myself on it. You have to obviously put aside how much it's going to tax based on your tax rate where you're at. and then the rest you can throw into savings, or I guess you could go on a trip if you've got that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking here. So you're about $4.69 a pack per seeds. How profitable is that at that pack size? Is that like a cost where you make decent money? Because I've talked to other seed people in the past on the
Mhm.
show, and packs definitely have the margin, but you need volume to go with it. It's Walmart selling cans of soup. They might make 5 cents off a can of soup, but you need to sell 1 million cans. So when at $4.69 a pack, was there margin in that for you?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So now let's get into what value comes with that. How much are those actually worth? So let's say Armenian cucumbers, okay? I'm just going to give this as an example. If you buy Armenian cucumbers from just about any seed company, what that means is that seed company, they probably didn't even do this, but let's say they were the only ones who had Armenian cucumbers, okay? They send the seed out to grower. The grower grows it. They send the seed back and the seed company pays them for it. But in reality, most of the time, the seed companies usually just have some high volume distributor that they buy it from. But that ensures that you don't get any quality with the seed because they haven't selected anything. They haven't rogued anything. They haven't selected for any positive qualities to the seed. So what I often do is, let's say there's a specific type of cucumber. Like this last year, I did the Tondo Manduria, which is a very popular variety in Italy and US and Canada. Everybody loves a variety. It's got issues I'm trying to work with, but in any case, so I got it from about 7 different seed sources. So I had 7 different sources and I grew them all together to compare to see if anyone was better than the other. And generally this is what I do. And when I find the best one, that's the seed that I save for the following year. And I just continue so over time, even though my pack of seeds is whatever cost it may be, previously, even though my costs were similar, the quality of my seed wasn't as high as it is now. And it's not that I'm trying to jip anybody off of anything. It's just I've learned more. I can do more. I'm able to provide more than I was before. So as it goes with, does that make profit? And what are the margins? You have to figure out, what are you selling through? Are you selling through PayPal? Are you selling through there's Stripe? Are you selling through so yeah.
Yeah, I get there's the cost. What I'm trying to get at here is, say a gardener's at home wanting to do this, or a market gardener.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, all right, I can sell them. We'll just say $5 a pack.
Yeah.
I got to make $2 a pack. What's a rough margin you think on a pack that's, I'm not coming to it.
No, that's fine. So let's see. My base that I have to clear is about $2.50 a pack plus shipping. And so I have to include there, okay, what's the price of this and that? And so we're probably looking at the actual cost of a pack being closer to $3.50 or so coming from me. And then that allows me to clear the $2.50 per pack for profit. And that profit goes generally back into the company unless there's excess at times. Yeah.
Sure. So there's a little bit of room there for people looking to do this.
Yeah.
In terms of space, this is another thing. There's probably growers out there who are like passionate about peppers, eggplants, whatnot.
Yeah.
How much space? Because you have 76 things listed on your site. I know you said you're sourcing some of these from other people. Mm-hmm. For the stuff you grow yourself, what's your land base that you're growing your own on?
Okay, so you asked a couple things. So first I'll get to land base and then I'll get to the seeds a little bit. First of all, when you think about land base, you have to think about, what is my constraint? My bottleneck is inbreeding depression. You want seed to be vigorous. If you're growing 10 corn plants, you're not even going to get quality seed to even do anything. You have to grow like 1,000 core plants to really get any kind of vigor so that what you're offering is even quality.
So you can get a bunch of mingling of like pollen and stuff like that.
Yeah. So inbreeding depression, what we're talking about is if you don't have enough plants of a specific variety, then the following generation from that seed will suffer. You'll have problems. You'll have genetic deformities. You'll have you'll have issues, but it won't be as vigorous, as strong. A lot of hybrids are touted for their vigor. If you grow a male of something at one time, you can have almost hybrid-like vigor because you're getting a lot of genetic diversity, even though it's one variety. But that being said, cucumbers, like you would probably have to grow at least 24, like Cucumis sativus. Cucumis mellow, it is pretty much, it's not bulletproof to inbreeding depression, but you could sell for one generation and there's not going to be an issue. So selfing is where you take the pollen from the plant itself and put it on that plant. Obviously, tomatoes and peppers, they sell. They have no issues with the inbreeding depression. Some plants don't, but melons are pretty much, as long as you have a healthy male flower and a healthy female flower and the plant is healthy, you can sell for one generation, get through that little bottleneck and then expand from there. So yeah.
Okay.
What I have, my smallest amount is I grow in 1 yard grape bin totes or grape bins. So when you see those trucks go out into the vineyards and they have those big bins on them that carry about 1 yard worth of the grapes for processing, I bought in a number of those. That's the smallest amount that I grow. And I have friends and neighbors that I have to keep these things far enough apart so that they don't cross. But I keep them in different places throughout where I live in a nearby town, in
How
nearby
many can
area.
they fit in a 1 yard box?
9 at the most. So you're looking probably closer to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. 88 is a lot better because you want that middle space empty. You want to grow on the edges and then have that middle space empty. But yeah, you could grow 8, especially smaller varieties. Larger varieties like the tar cacti from India. Yeah, I grew a number in a small space before, but yeah, next time I grow them, I'm going to need a lot more space. Those things are huge. Like the plants themselves get huge. And Baker Creek calls those Indian snake melon, but the real name is tar cacti. Anyways, what you say? But yeah, and then going back to seed, another thing you need to think about is if you want to sell seed, is how much space is a seed going to take when it comes to shipping? Am I going to offer fava beans, which are heavy and big? Am I going to have to figure out how to ship those? Or am I going to stay with something small? Now, one thing I do, and this is just preference. Did you ever hear of the Sample Seed Shop? There was a lady who ran a company called Sample Seed Shop. She ran it for years.
No.
Anyways, it's real simple. She just put a bunch of different stamps on the outside or stickers on the outside, made it fun. And then she was shipping the smallest possible envelope and just throw the seeds in there and then ship it to you and just keep everything real simple. And so that's my business is based on that. I used to use the padded envelopes, but those cost more for shipping. Hence, I would have to charge people for shipping. People don't like to pay for shipping. So now I've gotten down to just using regular letter envelopes, having everything pre-stamped, and then using that thin little packaging next to the seeds so they don't get crushed as they go through the post office. One of the advantages of that is I can do an order in 1 to 2 minutes. About 1 to 4 seed packets I can do in maybe 3 minutes max, and then I can just do it fast. Money is not the only issue as it goes with if you want to run a seed business or any business. The other issue is time. What kind of time commitment do you want to have? And for me, as it goes with seed orders, if I have to take 10 minutes a day on seed orders, that's not much. That's not bad at all. Whereas, and I don't pay for the little stamp machines or anything like that. You have to rent those and everything. You can avoid all that cost by just having things pre-stamped and just sending in regular envelopes.
Right.
If you have small seed, if you have big seed, then that can be an issue.
So if you wanted to grow everything you grew on one chunk of land and have the appropriate spacing to keep genetics isolated, would you need 2 acres? Would you need 10 acres? Do you have a guesstimate on how much space you need to keep all this genetically straight?
So then we get to isolation. If you're a grower, let's say you have tomatoes, a lot of people wouldn't have to worry about tomatoes because it's not very common that bees go from one tomato plant to another to pollinate. Most of the time they self-pollinate before that. And so people growing tomatoes, sometimes peppers, depending upon the pepper variety, or they don't need a lot of distance. Cucumbers and melons, you need a lot of distance, or you need to use other techniques. So here's some of the techniques that I use. Use netting, the usual netting. And I also can use they're called canasta. Anyways, those little bags, those little wedding gift bags that go canasta. It's another word with asta. Anyways, the wedding bags that can go over the fruit and they're netted. So you could do that for isolation and then you could hand pollinate. Another thing I do is, let's say I do timing. I only grow one variety at a time. That variety is finished. I grow another variety. And with timing, sometimes you can get the timing a little off. If you get the timing a little off, you just pick off the male flowers off of one of the varieties. And that will keep, usually it's the older one that's just pretty much finished. There's just some male flowers still around. You pull off those male flowers, there's no crossing. There's a number of other techniques, like you could grow in a greenhouse and only open the greenhouse at certain times. For me, if I were to grow on a chunk of land, I would probably need and openings and closings, or netted spaces with openings and closings to let the bees in and out. Because isolation is a huge issue for growing cucumbers and melons. One thing I can do anytime, I can grow regular cucumber right next to regular melon, next to a Melithra scabra, which is a mouse melon or sandy. And I can grow those right next to a Cucumis angoria, which is a gherkin, an African gherkin, those little spiky ones. You can grow all those right next to each other. They'll never cross. But within species, a lot of the Cucumis family, it crosses really easy. So you have to be real careful.
What distance do you think you need to have to separate? Is it 50 feet?
Mm-hmm. No, if there's no plants between point A and point B, you need like a mile. If there's a lot of flowering plants between one place and another, and there's a lot of obstacles between one place and another, then you need a lot less. I can't say exactly, but
it's a big distance.
Yeah, you just have to be really careful and thoughtful. So I had a variety I was expecting not to do well in my greenhouse, and it was getting too hot. And I had a variety outside of my greenhouse that was starting to flower. It was starting to produce female flowers. So what I had to do is I had to take the variety from in the greenhouse in 10-inch netted or 10-inch hydroponic pots, or 10-inch whatever those things are, those netted pots. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And I had to plant them in my backyard next to or near those other ones. But then I had to net those ones that came from the greenhouse to just have them finish up. And then every several days I went out there and uncovered it and hand pollinated and then covered it back up. And that's how I rolled the rest of the summer with that variety, which is a variety from Greece, a Grecian cucumber melon. So anyways, yeah.
Are you improving these, or are you just trying to keep them as is?
When I initially started, so when you initially start as a grower and you don't know what you're doing, the first thing you want to do, the number one thing you want to do is you want to find the plants that are the healthiest. And if you're going to start anywhere, start with that. Start with what plant has the most vigor is the healthiest. That is my number one. I've gotten to the point where I know exactly what I want out of each variety and based on the trait. And so then I basically figure out what the priority is. Priority number one, plant vigor, plant health. If you don't have a healthy plant, you're not going to have healthy seed for the next generation. And then the second, generally for me, for fruit, it actually is not color or taste. It's okay. This is given that I know the variety is not bitter. If the variety has some bitter qualities to it, then bitterness takes precedent over all these. But let's say the variety is not bitter, then texture comes next. And then other things like whether it's compact or whether it's viney, whether it's sprawling, what color and shape, whether it's cylindrical, round, long, whatever it may be. But starting out, you want to just start with keep your seed health, keep your plants healthy, keep your seed healthy. If something's diseased or looking terrible, you can keep seed from it, but it's most likely you're gonna really struggle the next year. So you just want that healthy seed from year to year. And then the more you get to know the plants, the more you can say, hey, you know what? I talked to these other gardeners on this group or whatever, and they said that the variety's not supposed to look like that, or maybe there's some trait that's not quite right. So maybe I'm going to incorporate another population in there, or maybe I'm going to try a different population, see which variety is most true to type and gives me what I want based on whatever the variety is. I personally try to go by what a variety historically is and follow that and make sure that the variety is high quality and true to type.
So when you grow one of these types, you have different locations to get the genetic separation. It sounds like on some of these, you got to grow at least 24 plants.
Oh yeah.
To get enough to resist that inbreeding potential.
Yeah. With melons less, but with regular cucumbers, 24 is about right.
Okay. So that 24 plants, that's going to produce a bunch of fruit. Are you then going through, let's just say it's 24, are you looking at the plant that exhibits the traits that you want and pulling from that? Or do you actually need, at the scale you're at, 24 plants worth of seed? So there's two ways you can grow, right? Like you need to plant enough plants to get the genetics straightened out, but you also need enough plants to produce all the seed you need. So you have two factors there. Which one is more the driver here, given the scale you're at?
The first thing I do is I sort by what varieties need the most work. If varieties need a ton of work and I have a lot of varieties that I need to grow that year, I save the ones with they require the most work till later. And then once those come up, once I can start growing those varieties, I place the ones that need the most work towards closest to me. So the ones around my house and within the closest proximity, those are the ones I'm going to babysit the most. Is it goes with seed saving. So what I'm doing is I do this kind of counting technique. I pretty much keep the whole population because you need that genetic diversity. So I keep the entire population. If I need to do a lot of work, I start with a lot more plants and I rogue as I go. Let's say the plants get to start to flower or they get to be, let's say 6 inches in size. By that time, I can see some traits that I want, some traits that I don't. I pull all the plants that I don't, and then just keep working on that until I get down to the 24 plants. And then as I go, I keep looking for the best, like the most true to types, the varieties with the best qualities. And then when I find plants like that, I find out how many next to that plant, surrounding that plant, are the same. How many have that trait? So let's say I developed this through selection. I developed a checkered variety, one that's checkered. And so there were some fruit that were light. There were some fruit that were dark. There was some fruit that was misshapen. And then there are some that are like half light, half dark. And then there's some that are checkered. What I would want to do is I would want to find which plants have the fruit that's checkered. And then we'll try to figure out where's the one that has the most that are close to that. And so let's say one plant has 2 other plants next to it with checkered, with what I'm looking for, then I would count that as a 2. Whereas another plant has 3 surrounding it that are checkered, that's a 3. And the higher the number, the better, the faster I can get to what I'm looking for in the next generation. And it can take 3, 4 generations to quickly, through selection, to get something real high quality.
I'm sure this can vary because these plants, the fruit are all different sizes, but what's a rough ratio of cucumber fruit to packs of seed? Is it 1 cucumber, 1 pack of seed? What's your best guess? Rounding for big ones, small ones. Where's the middle line, do you think?
Okay, so let's talk cucumbers and let's talk melons. Per weight, Cucumis sativus is going to give you more seeds than Cucumis mellow per weight because Cucumis sativus remains a cucumber. Cucumis mellow is picked immature. So you're thinking about it like Cucumis mellow, these muskmelons, we think about them like zucchini. They're like the zucchini of the melon family. So you pick them when they're small, but they end up becoming quite large. Now, some of them, the texture doesn't change that much as they get bigger, but obviously the size and how big they are does. Round ones, both with regular cucumbers and melons, round ones generally contain more seeds. And cylindrical ones contain a decent amount of seeds. And then long ones can or cannot. But generally speaking, if we get into varieties that produce fruit without pollination, those are parthenic carpet. They'll produce fruit without pollination, which means sometimes you'll have fruit that doesn't have any seed in it. And then sometimes you'll have fruit that has seed, but not very much. Those ones, it takes a very high population to get. You may need 5 or 6 plants to get a seed, or 5 or 6 fruit to get a packet. Whereas, let's say 1 round melon variety, 1 fruit could be like 10, 20 packets. It depends on the variety, how small the seed is and how the shape of the fruit. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think this is tough because there's different scale businesses? There's Baker Creek, right? There's different volume.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some that are smaller than me as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does somebody if you're thinking about going into this, do you need hundreds of each type to really create enough volume of seed to sell? Or can you get by with just 25 plants of this, 25 plants of this? And hey, if you sell out, but as you might say, 25 plants, it sounds like for the round ones, you're going to get a massive amount of seed, but some of these other ones, you're going to get tiny amounts.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I started out, I probably carried 6 to 10 varieties. And that was fine because what the important thing you need to look at if you want to go into a business is how much are you overlapping other people? What is the overlap? What are you bringing to the marketplace? What is your goal with this? Because if it's to make money, there's way easier ways to make money. There's way easier ways to make money. A lot of times I'll be out there trying to, vacuum up cucumber beetles or killing cucumber beetles by hand. And I'm in the sun's beating on me and I'm thinking, okay, what on earth am I doing? This is just crazy. But if it is, okay, this gentleman, his family, their father passed away, but he had this variety that's got it's delicious and it's beautiful and it's this white variety, whatever. It doesn't matter the color, but it has all this history to it and it's been in the family for generations and they entrust it to me. and I grow it and find out, oh, this is incredible. This is a really good variety. Then to me, it has more value, but really you don't want to be overlapping on the marketplace. That being said, you could look like you're overlapping when you're not. And that's, let's say I'm offering, I'm trying to think. So let's say I'm offering a dark Armenian cucumber. Okay. And there's a lot of companies and places that sell dark Armenian cucumbers, but I have a strain that's very long and it's dark Armenian, but it's long. And so I've selected for that trait. Well, all of a sudden I have something that's unique from the marketplace, or even an English telegraph. There's a lot of companies that sell English telegraph where it's not the actual thing. It's something else. And so even though it looks like I'm overlapping, I'm not, because I'm providing a high quality product where someone goes somewhere else and they're like, this isn't a high quality product. One thing that I do need to say is if you decide to go into a seed business, it's very important to label your pitchers, to put some kind of trademark or trade name on your pitchers, because if someone else takes that pitcher and sells it somewhere else, then even if you're not even related with those, people could buy seeds from this other company that's selling them for cheaper, of course, because they're not really what you worked hard to grow and sell. And they have a bad experience with it. And then they see your picture and think, oh, it's the same thing. So that's why it's important to whatever trademark, but mark your pictures.
Sounds like this is one of those things where you can easily dive in and get in your head in too deep quickly. Like,
Yeah.
The excitement of, wow, genetics from around the world, heritage varieties, the stories, like anybody who's a gardener into growing plants can easily be like, sign me up for 100. Like, I want it all. And I think hearing this, the key is restraint in the beginning of, I'm going to pick a few varieties that I know I can grow well. Because you're right. The whole key is execution. If you can't grow these things to be healthy, robust, and create successful future generations of plants from the seed you grow, then it's all lost. Having 100 varieties and none of them germinate and they're all poor plants, that's a waste. So find the ones you can grow, start small, master those, and then slowly expand out the circle over time as more, which isn't much different from a lot of market farming, microgreen farming, any of that. Most growers, it's always start with a few things, grow those well, then move on to the next thing. Would you agree that's the way to go?
Yeah, exactly. Let's say with gardening in general and farming, I'm very much a lean approach type person. And it has to do with every space costs energy and time. The more space you have, the more energy and time it requires. And the more you're trying to juggle, the more energy it requires. Choosing varieties that you are good with. I early on had to say, okay, I am not good at tomatoes. Every year I do. I made this list of 100 things to focus on, and I really worked on this list when I lived in Tucson to make tomatoes grow well. They don't grow well unless you have netting, shade netting, and a whole bunch of other things that I wasn't willing to do. That's okay. It's important to quickly recognize when you fail, or not just when you fail, but when you've tried something enough times and you need to say, okay, maybe this isn't what I should do. Maybe I should do what I'm good at, because if I do what I'm good at, if I work on the varieties that I do well with, then it will be easy for me to make something marketable. Another thing I do want to say, especially for market growers, if you have an heirloom variety and you have any kind of concerns that it may not be there next year, always refrigerate, keep cool at least 100 seeds. Because this last year, what was it? Sustainable Seed used to sell English Telegraph. And it was a fantastic population that they had. I only had just a small handful of seeds. And because it was part of all the fruit, I got plenty of fruit, but none of the fruit produced seed. And I lost the variety. And it's sad. A lot of people like English Telegraph. And in every year, there seems to be less and less reliable sellers of the variety, possibly because the climate's warming as well. But in any case, yeah, do what you're good at. Start small, do what you're good at. Keep things to a manageable level because life you save with energy will help you sustain yourself to keep yourself going. Whereas if you just try to do too much, then you're going to die out. You're going to burn out quickly. And nobody wants that.
Absolutely. I think that's really well said. And it goes for any business, seed starting or otherwise. What are other mistakes or words of caution you would have for somebody who wants to explore this as a business?
Yeah. So I would say, especially if you're thinking of selling online, I started with my domain name. And it's important to make sure you can get whatever domain name you feel is important, specific to whether it's a domain name related with your farm or whatever, and find a marketplace. Make sure that you have the marketplace and the margin to even do this. And then find out about the laws in your area. Do you need a seed seller's license? What exactly do you need where you live? And just figure out whether it's feasible or not. It's important to consider, what do I want out of my farm? What's important to me? Maybe everyone likes a certain kind of radish or a certain kind of tomato or whatever, and it's not really available, or it's the availability is restricting. Maybe it's time to think about saving your own seed. And if you need a high population, you're going to have extra, and you don't want to have that extra around for 10 years or whatever. It'll go bad before you can grow it all. So selling seed may be a really viable option for you in that situation. And it may be, you can provide value to other farmers, and you can say, hey, I know a farmer who can grow this for me, and we both grow this variety, and I can grow this variety for them, and just work together. One thing I would say is you have to be careful with just everybody's going to want to sell you something. Everybody's going to want to make it more expensive. My website is through WordPress, and I do WooCommerce, which is an e-commerce platform. With WooCommerce, you can go through PayPal to process things, or you can go through Stripe to process things, or you can go through WooCommerce's platform as well. You just want to compare those rates, figure out what works for you. Google, if you want to advertise, I highly suggest Google Ads. It works very well, especially if you have a niche variety that nobody else has. It gets that out there so people can find you. One thing I would say to look out for is, I'm just trying to think of that one company. What company reviews? I'm just trying to think of it, like your local reviews, like Yelp. There you go. Yelp. Stay away from Yelp. Do not advertise with Yelp at all. You will spend $500 to get $15 back. So yeah, it's not, yeah. And then they will never leave you alone. So they're very aggressive. So yeah, just you can make a little Yelp page, but never stay away from Yelp. Just stay away. But yeah.
And you're in California, right?
Yes. Currently, I started out. So I've been doing my shop since 2013. It's been a little while. Yeah. So since 2013, I started out in Tucson, and then I moved to California. So yeah, I'm in the Bay Area. I'm in Fairfield, which is about halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento. Okay. It's hot enough that these grow well, but it's cool enough that we get the breeze from the Bay Area at night. It makes it cool down.
What is I'm trying to get a sense of the yearly cadence. How much of the year are you spending growing?
Yeah. So when I lived down in Tucson, I would do all my prep, and March. And then I believe April 1st is when I plant. And I could go all the way through October. And here where I live now, it's much more, I'm restricted by about.
You're maybe 4 months of growing, and then is it another month, would you say, of harvesting and prepping the seed, and then the rest of the year is just website, shipping, time off, that type of thing?
Yeah, time off. I wish. Yeah, that's another thing you have to be careful as a seed grower and seller is there's a lot of the back end where you need to put in orders into some kind of system where you can keep track of all your orders that you've ever done. I just use Excel and my let's see, I have an Excel form that I use and I just take it from my emails and type it back onto Excel. I'm sure there's a much easier way, and you could probably tell me after this, but you have to be careful of that. And then, yeah, as it goes with, so I'm growing from, so I prep in April, and then I grow in the greenhouse in April. So I prep for the greenhouse in March, and then I grow in the greenhouse all through April. And then I'm also doing all the transplants in April. And then I usually do the transplants about 2 weeks before I want to plant out. I generally shoot for May 1st, but oftentimes I want to go just a little later, maybe May 5th or so. And then if I put out all the transplants, and then that usually goes till near the beginning of July is when I want to really start harvesting things, especially the earlier varieties. And then come about halfway through July, I want to really start getting in as many of that second crop as I can. And then that will go all the way through. The issue is that beginning around August 1st, we get powdery mildew around here. We get start to get powdery mildew. And so that kind of, if it's an older plant, it will succumb to powdery mildew. You'll start to see it around August. But if you started the variety later, you can get it all the way through September if you're really good at it. And for me, there's a product, it was made by another company. It's now, unfortunately, the lady who spent her whole career to develop these two products, she developed Serenade and Sonata. Serenade is a bacterial-based biofungicide. Sonata is also bacteria-based fungicide, but Serenade is for bacteria-based diseases. Sonata is for fungal and mildew-based diseases. And so I use Sonata starting this time of year, and I just spray the plants every 2 weeks. And that will allow me to get an extra month of growing without powdery mildew, which is just huge for me because the powdery mildew just slows everything down. It makes it so that I wouldn't get as much of a crop. So I can get in 2 crops if the variety lets me. It just depends.
And how long are you comfortable holding your seed for before you start to see germination rates dip? So it's 76 varieties. I'm assuming you don't have to necessarily grow every variety every year, because I know seeds can store for a very long time if kept in optimum conditions. Maybe you have a different view on that.
It's pretty interesting. So this is what I'll say. So this original gentleman, Angelo, sent me seed, 2012 and 2012. So that's been well over 10 years. But he used a plastic wrap over the seeds, and then he put it in Ziplocs. So it's plastic wrap in Ziplocs. And I've been keeping those in the fridge pretty much ever since. And when I plant those out, I get 90+% germination and high vigor. So obviously keeping seed cool, limiting the amount of oxygen that gets to it, the air that gets to it really helps with, I don't freeze seed. And this is the reason why I've tried that in the past. Then you have to get the humidity percentage just right. If you get it too high, then the seeds will break. They'll burst from the water that crystallizes. If it's too dry, you kill the seed permanently. It's permanently dormant. It will not come back. And you have to get it just right. And then you can freeze it. And then a lot of seed can last over 10 years that way. But for the risk, it's just easier to refrigerate. And so each year I test the germination of every single variety. That's one of the things required is a seed grower. Test the germination of every single variety. If it doesn't come back right, then I get rid of that lot and try another lot, maybe a variety so I've got a smaller seed fridge where it's all my working varieties with the packs. And then I've got my more longer term storage fridge with everything bottled up and in little Ziplocs and things where I keep things more long term.
Yeah.
And so just to your question, sorry, it's probably you're looking at 5 years minimum if you've got really high quality seeds. So they'll probably last about 7 years before I really start saying, okay, it's not just the germination you're looking at, you're also looking at the vigor. As soon as the vigor drops, it doesn't matter if you got 90% germination. If the vigor drops at all, you need to replant. You need to restart that variety. Vigor is the number one thing you need to worry about.
Yeah, I'm looking at your site here. So do you plant, even if you're not planning on breeding a variety each year, do you plant a few seeds just to see if vigor is staying strong?
Oh, no, I don't plant. Okay, so this is how I determine vigor. All my varieties go through optimal condition to sprout. So I'm basically putting them in a paper towel and Ziploc. Everything's clean. And then just moisten paper towel, put it at 80 degrees, and they'll sprout. Most of the varieties will sprout within 24 hours. Some varieties will sprout within 48 hours. It just depends on the varieties. Kumis, Angoria and Melitra pendula can take up to 2 weeks. But as long as they have good germination, that's just their nature. So it just depends on the variety. But with Cucumis milo, Cucumis sativus, I'm looking at, is it sprouting within 24 hours? If I'm not getting 90% germination in 24 hours, I might get it within 48 hours. If I'm not getting it within 48 hours, I either need to replant or if I don't want to continue that variety, it's out. So I have very little give. I've been doing this long enough that I'm pretty strict about about my standards and the quality. And I determine vigor based on how fast it sprouts.
Okay. Yeah. That makes it really easy then for testing. So this is an interesting business. It's not, think definitely this is not a get rich quick scheme. Nothing is. It's, I think, a labor of love in many cases. You're doing this because you really enjoy it. And I'm sure there's a lot of other benefits. I often talk about the multiple forms of capital. So when you do a business, one form of capital that comes back is money. Another form is social capital. You make connections, you meet friends, you build community. Another form is just this personal satisfaction of the soul capital. Like, I did this because I think it's important to the world. And I think you're showing that's really key. And it's not a light business, meaning you're not just going to touch it a little bit at a time. This is going to take a lot of work to do. You start small, but if you have the land, if you have the means, meaning the time, the energy, all that to do it, there's something here. I think there are niches, and I just love that you focused in on cucumbers. It's like there's Pepper Geek on YouTube who just does peppers, and I'm Brad, I can't remember his last name, he's up by you, who just does tomatoes. That's his thing. And I think that's how people get really good at something, is narrow down, get good at it, find other people who like that, and then slowly expand out by giving that group more value, providing them quality, listening to what they say, because they're going to bring other ideas to the table. I'm sure you've gotten a ton of new variety ideas since starting this in 2012 from people that have followed you and you've made connections with, and it's helped you build over time. So I love that. The next step in this is creating your own varieties. Is that something that you do or is on the radar?
Yeah. First of all, I do want to talk about like my why. I do I definitely, my why is definitely to find really good varieties, to improve them if I can, to provide people access to them. And when I say improve, I don't mean I'm going to change it from what it's supposed to be. If it has degraded over time in some way, I try to make it to what it should be. And access is a really important thing to me, but I think the most important thing to me is what legacy I'll leave. Well, one of the things I have a variety that's extremely high quality, and the majority of those who've grown it successfully and have picked it when you're supposed to pick it, have said, a lot of them, not everyone, has said, this is the best variety I've ever had. For me, it just knocked my socks off. And one thing I would like to leave as a legacy is seeing that in the marketplace as a variety grown by market farmers and maybe some high-end chefs in high-end markets, grocery stores or something like that.
What's the name of that one?
So it goes by two names. It's the striped carousel leggese or the Meloncilla Baciata Salento. Italy, it's sold as it's just called Meloncilla. It's Meloncella. So they pronounce that cella, melon. But that's the reason for the two names is because when I initially brought it here, that was a name by the striped carousel leggese was the name by which it was sold to me, and also which it was sold by several other people. And it took a while until I found out the name that most people call it over is Meloncilla. So it goes by two names currently. I am working on some naming structures as it goes with my business and also the organization of my website to get a little more clear with some of the variety names and stuff. But it can be hard. Depending upon where you live in Italy, the same variety can go by half a dozen different names. But for me, I want to get to what do the people in the area where it comes from call it. Yeah. But I think the high quality and leaving a legacy is what I really want to do. I want to leave the world a better place. These varieties can grow with minimal water in places where it's extra hot. Oftentimes, regular cucumber varieties peter out at 95 degrees while these are just pumping fruit like crazy and going nuts and growing crazy. And they can grow with restricted water or irregular watering and not get bitter or have any other like issues related with that kind of stress.
Walk me through a year of what does that look like, seed to packet?
Thanks for asking, Diego. First, once you harvest all the seed, make sure it's properly dry. You winnow things out, you test the germination, and then you write the germination down on both the packets and on the some other place where you keep that information. And then for me, I have this organization where I make tabs for each area where I'm going to put seed packets. I make these little tabs so I can organize my seed packets. And then I put my seed packets into these little boxes. And then I put all the baggies, all the extra baggies, Ziplocs that I'm keeping seed is in, I bottle them up, put them in the refrigerator. Except for the best, I put the very best, I store those separately. And part of the reason for that is because when I grow that variety again, I want to make sure that I have enough seed of the very best. And here living in California, wherever you live, you want a to-go kind of bag or containers where hey, if there's some kind of emergency, I'm just going to take this and we'll be good. Getting to that, I write the variety names and descriptions on whatever website or Merchant Center or WooCommerce. I have little Excel files that I do. I add all the description to the Excel files and things like that, and the prices, and then I put it all on my website. And then I make sure as you go, if you want to sell seeds, you're going to have to take pictures of these, of what they look like out in the field, what they look like as you cut them up or whatever. Make sure that you have those pictures in there and you have the links for if you're advertising, you're going to need those links. And then you copy all the packet descriptions onto the actual packets. And then for me, I used to actually print them out on pages and cut them out individually and then glue each little description on without gotten to the label sticker. So it's so much easier. And then, so once everything's all labeled, everything's on the website, I make sure everything's ready to go. That's when I'm pretty much ready. But it is a process. It does take time. Currently, if you were to come to my house, you'd see a whole bunch of seeds everywhere as I'm continuing to process fruit. And then once I process fruit, then I finish winnowing out seeds. And then once I winnow out, let's say I have a farm that I'm borrowing some of their land for to grow. Once I'm all done with that one variety, then I pay the farmer for the amount of seeds that I grew there. And then I can actually move on to getting ready to sell those seeds.
It's also a bit of a community effort here, right? Reaching out to neighbors to gain access to some land that you don't have to grow these things.
Yeah, exactly.
I love what you're doing. I think it's really interesting. As I said earlier, we'll have to hook up to talk about the cucumbers themselves, but this is a great insight into the business of seed saving. You're going to be opening up your shop later this month again. People can check that out at cucumbershop.com. But thanks so much for talking, Jay.
Well, thanks for having me, Diego.